This morning, our reading comes from the Gospel of John, the 20th chapter. It's rather a favorite gospel, and we read this one a lot because it has so much in it. And so each year when we read it, we have a great deal of thought put into just what each piece means. So listen again to John 20, starting with verse 19. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fears of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. And the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. And again Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone his sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." He said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my fingers where the nails were and put my hands into his side, I will not believe." And a week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. And though the doors were locked, Jesus came. He stood among them, and he said, "Peace be with you." And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." And then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen but believed." And Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. God's word for God's people. Thanks be to God. Well, we start this great 50 days of Easter. This is the second Sunday of Easter. And it can be a tough Sunday for us as we plan worship. And that kind of happens for a number of reasons. First off, if you look to your right and look to your left, we're not quite as packed in as we were last week. And so praise God, we had a full house last week for Easter. You know, and it makes it a little harder to sing and play and preach when there's fewer people. Maybe that's just group dynamics. But it's also, as Easter is such a high holy day, it's such a bright and festive day that we just can't help but be terribly excited about Easter Day. And we use up all of that good adrenaline and excitement. And so we end up with today. And church calls it Low Sunday. Low Sunday. Sounds kind of sad to me, but that's what the church calls it. Low Sunday. But I think there's a bigger reason why today might be called Low Sunday. Because I think it speaks very deep truths to us about how the risen Christ comes to us. Low Sunday is kind of a down and out Sunday. But I think the Lord Jesus chooses to come to the down and the out. And so if you read the resurrection appearances, it's kind of startling to me. Kind of makes you really pause and wonder. These disciples in the story are not doing anything particularly religious when Jesus comes to them and appears to them. We don't hear that they're praying together. We don't hear that they're worshiping together. And we don't even hear that they're singing hymns. What do we hear? They're locked in a room. They're locked in a room. They're scattered, and they seem lost, and they don't seem to have any unity. It it makes you wonder why this story seems that they've lost that energy that Christ brought to them. Why have all the teachings that Jesus brought to them seemed to have faded away as his life ebbed away? Because we hear in other Gospels, we hear in Luke, that as they're walking down the road to Emmaus, what are they doing? Whining, complaining. Or as we hear, maybe they've just given up on discipleship and they've gone back to their day jobs. They're back fishing again. But in John's Gospel, on this Easter night, we hear instead of doing anything, they huddle afraid and locked away in a room. They hide in fear. Speaking of locked rooms, I hope you all feel safe here. For our dear Daryl Barker, make sure that once we're in worship service, our doors are locked so that we don't have to worry about intruders coming into a meeting. But it all kind of makes me wonder, as we sit with the disciples, locked away, is this the church's natural state? To be a bunch of scared people locking out the world? And maybe that's why John's Gospel gives us this reading for Low Sunday. Because it'd be easy to think that the disciples were utter, complete failures. Maybe that's what we sometimes feel like we share with them. It's Easter, and those guys don't even know it. And it's Easter for us too. Those disciples feel they have nothing to offer, for they are not a church, and they have no vision, and they have no energy, and they have no courage, and they have no conviction, so they hide. They hide because they are afraid. And they only know what they've seen. They've seen that Jesus was dead and gone, that their shepherd was struck down, and that as his sheep, they've scattered. They should have believed the witnesses. They should have believed those who came running to tell them, as those women did, who went on that early morning and found the tomb empty, that he was not there. They should have believed that when Peter and the beloved disciple later came to them and reiterated that the tomb was empty, they should have believed that Jesus had risen. But they didn't. But even though they did not believe, Jesus still came to them. And so this story is not even really about the disciples or about doubting Thomas, as much as it is a story about Jesus. Because we always think we want Jesus to see us in the best light. We want him to come to us when we're at our best, to help us improve. But in reality, we meet Jesus when we're at our worst. You see, he's not really interested in improving us. He's interested in helping us be resurrected. And so, these fearful disciples hide behind locked doors. Yet, just as Jesus went to them, Jesus comes to us when we too hide in our fears and our anxieties. He comes among us when we're worrying, when we worry about things like money and health. We worry about our future. We worry about our image. We worry about our reputations. We worry about our families. And yet, he also finds us ready to hide behind doors and try to keep the world locked away. He finds us that we're afraid that we'll be found out, to be as fearful people as we really are. That we'll become to be known not as courageous or virtuous or committed as we've tried to lead people to believe about ourselves. And we often wonder if people really knew. People really knew. Guess what? Jesus does really know. He really knows, and he still comes and he stands among us. And he stands there with his wounded side and with holes in his hands and his feet. And he says to us again and again, peace be with you. Peace be with you. And if that's not good news, I don't know what is. But then he says something that's even more astonishing. He says, as the Father sent me, so I send you. He's got to be mistaken. Certainly Jesus has got the wrong bunch. You see, we're the ones behind the locked doors here, Jesus. He can't possibly mean us. Aren't we the ones hiding from the world? But Jesus doesn't make a mistake. Jesus comes to those that he sends. And that's the beauty of being the church. We are the one he sends. Not those who are most virtuous, not the strong, not the wise, not the courageous, not the talented, not the gorgeous, not the ones who stand below, or not the ones we see in the public limelight. No, he wants to send us. He wants to send us just like we are, foolish men and women who are slow of heart to believe, who are slow of heart to accept the resurrection. Thomas missed it. He couldn't buy it. He couldn't believe it. They said to Thomas, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the marks of the nails in his hands and put my finger in his side, I will not believe." So there. Thomas says, so there. If I can't see it, then it's not real. But yet he'd been a disciple. He'd seen the miracles. He sat under the teaching of the Master. He heard words of love and forgiveness and mercy. And yet, he felt like it was time to get back to practicalities, to be more logical. Show me or I won't believe, he says. But Jesus reminds them, blessed are those who have not seen, and yet who have believed. Thomas demanded to see and touch before he would believe in the resurrected Jesus. Yet, that is what Jesus wants us to understand. That he wants us to understand that the testimony of reliable witnesses is evidence enough. And that there was a special blessing for those who accepted it as evidence enough. And so the good news of Low Sunday is that Jesus came to Thomas and he came to the church and he comes to us. And he says to them and he says to all of us, if you want to see, see. If you want to touch, touch. And if we can just dare to believe that God did indeed raise Jesus from the dead, can we not also dare to believe that he will raise us too? Not just when we die, not just on the final day and the final resurrection, but now, as a church, as people who often feel afraid and want to hide, but who understand that when Jesus comes among us, we're raised to new life, and we are raised to be the church, to love as he loves, and to forgive as he forgives. We're not up to it on our own, and I can say that. We never have been, we never will be. But Jesus still comes, and Jesus still sends us, and he still calls us to be the church. And as he calls us, we understand that's not a once and only thing, but it happens over a lifetime. And Jesus calls us to different things for different seasons. I know God called me in 1991 when I first began professional ministry as a lay worker in my local church. I started out at the children's minister of 500 kids each Sunday. Now, was that not a good time? 65 teachers and 500 kids. It was a big church. And I remember when he called me on in 1996 into ordained ministry. I remember when he called me here to this church. And now he calls me again. and I will be retired. You see, I'm part of a generation called boomers. We are retiring at a rate of 10,000 a day, and over the next 20 years, it's estimated there will be 70 million boomers retired in the U.S. alone. We're a pretty fast-growing group. I'll be 66 this year, so it's time for me to talk. Effective July 1st, I will be leaving it, and you'll have a new pastor. God will be blessing you. You'll be excited to hear about the new pastor. Good things will happen this summer. My daughter, God willing, will graduate from college. The third kid and the bank of mom can finally close. It'll be all right. I'll actually have a checkbook with a balance again, maybe. Lana and I is celebrating her graduation. And my retirement, we're going to take a little trip. We're going to go see the West. We've never been to the Grand Canyon in Yellowstone. So it's going to be girls on the road for a little while. Then I'll come home, take care of Jim. They may need a lot of taking care of. I'll be wise, John, and yeah. I know most of you all haven't seen much of him lately. He's been back in Jacksonville for 6 months to stay closer to his doctors. So not only have I enjoyed serving here these last few years, and Jim and I have looked ahead on what we will have for our own future, and we have prepared for that future, and we're comfortable that we're ready to both be retired. And I knew there'd be a time when I'd pass the leadership on to someone new. And now as I look at our church's future opportunities and needs, I am sure that God has prepared us for such a time as this. And the bishop and the cabinet prayerfully and completely reflected on who would be the best to lead Emmanuel through the next chapter of our life as the church. And working through staff parish and their leadership, we hope to have a very smooth transition. And I've been very blessed by our church and by our staff in the way you've used your time and your resources. And it's been a privilege to work alongside so many of you as we've served and given and prayed together, praying not only for one another here at Emmanuel, but praying for our community and our world. And mostly, I think I've been most happy being part of helping our church to be a place where Christ is honored and grace is evident. So for now, our work remains the same, to find ways to help people in our community connect with the grace of God. And I'm looking forward to watching how God will lead us over these next couple of months as we transition into new leadership